is Alexis Alexander, and I'll be refuting the claim that different forms of social media are negatively influencing the youth American culture. My opponent's secondary claims are that the unrestricted access to knowledge on the internet is negatively influencing America's youth behavior. Number 2, social media creates a negative value system on materialism. And number 3, social media creates an unhealthy concept of attractiveness and well-being. My response to these secondary claims is that the infinite amounts of information available on the internet is positively influencing America's youth by engaging them in self-driven learning. Materialism is not directly impacted upon by the use of social media, and although the media does often portray an unrealistic view of attractiveness, social media can also promote individuality and creativeness. My response to secondary claim 1 is that the infinite amounts of information available on the internet is positively influencing America's youth by engaging them in self-driven learning. The original speech states that, according to Denise Wilmer, teenagers who have unrestricted access to the internet are more likely to use drugs. This statement is misleading and provides misinformation. According to an article by Amy Trattenberg, social media can actually give the user a pseudo-high, similar to that of a drug. When using social networking sites, Harvard University found that 80% of users were actually talking about themselves when posting. This form of self-reflection causes an increase in dopamine levels in the brain, which is known to give feelings of pleasure and happiness. Because of this pseudo-high, users who self-reflect on social media are actually less likely to seek out actual drug use. The original speaker presented several valid points of evidence, but failed to fully reason through each of them. One piece of evidence stated that the internet leads to a higher percentage of teenage pregnancies than a decade ago. While teenage pregnancy may in fact be higher than it was a decade ago, other issues are responsible for this, such as youth reaching puberty at younger ages. Medical News Today states that boys are reaching puberty 6 months to 2 years sooner than they were a decade ago. This trend is also observed in girls. The earlier onset of hormones and physical changes is largely responsible for an increase in teenage pregnancy, not social media use. My response to secondary claim number 2 is that materialism is not directly impacted upon by the use of social media. In the original speech, one piece of evidence is used to state that materialism is bad for you. Certainly everyone can agree that to some extent materialism will always lead to a negative effect. However, materialism can also be a good thing. Holding high desires for items can drive one to work harder and achieve more at work, so that one day they'll be able to own the things they dream about. Materialism can also be viewed as a motivator, as long as it is not taken to an extreme level. The speaker gives reference to a board-certified pediatrician who states that teenagers who have low self-esteem are more likely to cause harm to themselves. While this is undoubtedly true, the speaker's claim that not having the latest and greatest items causes this is unreasonable. Teenagers who do not have the latest technology or the latest items are not likely to cause serious harm to themselves. Individuals who harm themselves are often deeply distressed, according to Mind.org. Self-harm is a form of catharsis, often used to give the feeling of a pain that the victim can control themselves, unlike physical or emotional abuse. Materialism is not even remotely likely to lead to such drastic measures of self-injury, unless also linked with a more serious scenario like physical abuse, emotional abuse, or bullying. My response to the third secondary claim is that although the media does often portray an unrealistic view of attractiveness, social media can also promote individuality. The speaker states that reality television shows cause an increase in unrealistic views of perfection. While television is not really a form of social media, it is a form of press media. And to contradict this idea of all television shows giving an unrealistic view of perfection, I ask you to consider the show How to Look Good Naked. This show takes the average everyday woman, regardless of her size, and teaches them how to feel good about their bodies and how to embrace the natural beauty of their body, regardless of the size they are. So this goes to show that not all TV shows are leading to an unrealistic view of beauty. Thank you.
That's right, no laughing in this class. All right, all the structural issues are fine. I thought that you basically are taking a position that where you're going to be arguing counterclaims on most of the points, and I thought that they were relatively clear. On the first point where you're talking about the pseudo-high, I do think you're making an inference here that people who get a pseudo-high are less likely to try other drugs. I'm not sure that there's any information in your argument that really supports that conclusion. That sounds to me like an inference, and it's a big inferential leap that you're making there. I do think that it might be a good idea to press the evidence that the advocate presented here a little bit more, on not just rely on the counterclaim on that particular point. I do think that you had a stronger argument on the causality on teen pregnancies, and I thought that that was explained a lot more clearly. On the issue of materialism, I think that you do okay job presenting general counterclaims on this issue. The challenge that self-harm is likely to result from this kind of materialism, I think, is pretty good. And here's another place where reminding us of what the evidence that the advocate presented is in more detail, and contrasting that to the evidence that you're presenting, I think would be helpful. I do think that it seems like it's much more likely that people have serious problems that don't have to do with whether or not they have an iPod or the latest technological gizmo or a car or any of those kinds of things that are promoted by the social media, but rather that they have other problems in their lives that are more significant. Those things are only secondary issues. That seems to make a lot of sense. It would just be nice if you could have something that could give us a little bit more proof of that. It seems like a reasonable inference. I'm just not sure that it, and again, I don't remember the advocate's evidence as clearly as I could. On the third point, basically you've got a counterexample. The advocate presents an example and you present some counterexample, and I don't know how we're supposed to reach a generalization based on, well, here's one, well, here's one. So it's good to have the examples, but we need a little bit more contrast as well. All right, thank you.